this is not so bad compared to others.
Yeah.
This room, even the bigger room,
Yeah.
much worse.
Yeah. US sometimes it's
Yeah, you're right. US are much hot.
yeah. I the hotel is all the opposite.
No, no problem.
That's noisy. Okay, before we get started, we need a note taker. Thank you. Robin, appreciate that. And we need a Jabber scribe. Thank you, Yo. So as always, the note well is on the screen. Please make sure you follow all the rules. We have a long list of documents that are with the ISG. We will mostly just hear nothing to report about them, but we want to touch base with each of the authors to make sure that any issues that have surfaced have been addressed. Then we have one active working group deliverable that has not been sent to the ISG, and that's regarding header protection. So we'll spend some time on that. And then there's some things that have been proposed for rechartering, and that is the going to be the next topic we really dive into. So the lightweight CMP profile. Hendrik couldn't be here, but he's planning to present this remotely. So we'll see how that goes. I do know that he ran a test and everything worked fine during the test. So it's as best as we can do. But Murphy lives. Exactly. And then if time allows, we're going to talk about two other proposals that have not yet been talked much about on the list. One regarding updates to RFC 5480 regarding the key usage pieces, and one about post-quantum composite signatures. Any agenda bashes? Okay, then let's go through this long list of documents that's with the ISG. Are there any open issues regarding 6844 bis? I'm unaware of any, but I just want to make sure that if any surfaced, okay. You want to hit the button for Jacob?
Hi, I'm just chiming in to say there are no open issues with 6844 best.
Super, thank you. Okay, the next one is mine, which is the hash of root key certificate extension. We got a couple comments, non-blocking comments from Roman's review. I have shown him all of the text for that. He pushed it forward to IETF last call, and so I'll deal with posting those things that are in my edit buffer when I deal with any IETF last call comments. The next two are PKIC shake and CMS shakes. I don't know, Quinn or Panos, are there any open issues? Sure.
There have been many good review comments, and they've all been resolved. And the two documents are expected to be done very soon.
Okay. So I think the documents were posted earlier today, right?
One of them.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So this is Roman. I mean, they're a little more than done. I mean, they're the RFC editor queue.
Yeah.
Yeah, as are the top two.
So they're not done, but sort of done. Right. They don't have RFC numbers yet. Fair enough. Okay. LAMP's CMS hash sig is in roughly the same state as the hash of root key, except that those are pending. Basically, we agreed on some solutions to some comments from the AD review. All those were posted on the mail list, and then IETF last call has started, right? And that's the same for the last two. All right, so we got a lot of stuff that's getting very close to done. Okay, any questions about any of that? Good. All right, so then we're moving on to header protection. I don't know if Alexi or Bernie's presenting. A hatless Bernie. Okay. Here's the clicker. That was fast. Turn it on.
Wake up. Okay. Okay. My name is Björn Hüneis, and I'm here presenting the header protection requirements together with Alexei. We wrote up a first 0.0 draft, and we're going now through the requirements part of this. So basically, to put you where we are is that EFS MIME since version 3.1 has a header protection functionality. It's somewhat specified as shown here in the picture that you take the whole message, wrap it, and put it to the content, because headers cannot be protected normally, but if you put it to the content, it can be protected by either encryption and signature or just signature. So what we did in the last weeks was to merge two drafts that were out. Like there was the draft Luck Header Protection 02. It has the name the Lucky Draft. There was like use cases and requirements plus an implementation description. So we took from this draft, we took the use cases and requirements and added there the draft Melnikov Flames header protection, which had some words also already going towards solutions. So the content is now we have use cases, we talk about interaction cases and protection levels. Then there are requirements and then these additional considerations mainly taken from Alexei's earlier draft that contains possible solutions, considerations for the sending side and the receiving side. So the goal of this meeting, of this talk, is that we learn which protection levels are in scope. I will come back to later what the protection level means here. And which requirements we are going to address in LAMPS. So the set of requirements made up may not be complete. There may be too many even, and there certainly will be some adjustments to the existing requirements. So, okay, protection levels. So we see three cases. Like one is signature and encryption. Like in our case, we only use this signature and encryption, nothing else. But there are other implementations that use this signature only case, actually customer demanding this, obviously. And we have the case encryption only, which we are not quite sure whether it makes sense or whether this is at all relevant to header protection or whether it can be merged to A. We had a discussion last year in LAMPS and it indicated we probably only need to document it because it's not so relevant in practice. If you have to say something about this, especially about C, you have a chance to go to the mic. Is this going to the mic or going out? Obviously, it's going out.
Just to point out that if the discussion happened.
What's the name?
Yavmir, sorry. If the discussion happened last year, it was not at IETF 105. Because
This is IETF 105.
Okay.
104.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Right. Search 105 replaced 104. So it was in Prague then last IETF, yeah. Is there anything like on the content of this? Well, if not, we are probably going forward with trying to avoid the encryption-only case in specification and documenting it, what should happen when you get one that is only encrypted. Is that fine? Nobody seems to care. Okay, I structured the requirements a bit in general requirements, then sending side requirements and receiving side requirements. And at the end, I have even some backwards compatibility requirements. So there are 4 slides that kind of put the requirements together. So Alexei wants to say something.
Just clarifying, we are not doing requirements just for the sake of requirements. Some of the requirements are things that we need to document in the final solution document, and other requirements hopefully will help us decide between a couple of variants we are trying to pick between. So if people want to comment on relative priority of requirements, how important they are, bring up new things, so please do. So that's the sort of the intent of this section.
Okay, thank you. So then I'm going shortly through this, but maybe I asked before the question, how many of you have actually read the drafts or the draft we are presenting here?
Not many.
Not many. I start to think whether this discussion makes all sense. Yeah, okay. It will be probably just a short meeting, but we have to be aware that we're not getting so much feedback on this. Anyways, so we have the One, that it should be fine a bit about the format, about the MIME structure, content type, and so on. We're not yet sure to what extent it needs to be defined, but there needs to be something on it in the solution space to help the implementers to do the right thing, especially if there are plenty of choices to use. For example, file name was one thing that is kind of differently used. So this is about that. Probably needs to refine a bit more. It should be easy implementable, so we don't want to make a whole new thing that gets rather complicated. We see that there should be, if possible, only one format for all protection levels, so that we do not have different formats between encryption and signed versus signed only. And it should actually mitigate man in the middle and downgrade attacks as good as possible. So these are the 4 general requirements. If there is any comment in the room. It's not so many people have read the draft. The silence is not surprisingly coming. Okay. Nothing here. Then we have the sender requirements. Basically, in the signature case, we need to define which header fields we need to protect with the signature. Then in the encryption case, we need to decide which header fields we need to send in clear and which header fields you must not or should not send in clear, because we follow kind of the data minimization principles, so that we are not leaking too much what shouldn't be leaked. But this is probably only a should. And also, like, there is some special cases that are header fields that we should not include in any header protection part. One case is the BCC, which is somewhat special. So some implementations, it should get out. So the receiver of a message should not get to know who has been in the BCC. But Alexei found an interesting cases that the BCC should be in. He may elaborate on that.
Yeah, I was trying to implement S/MIME encryption with BCC, and depending how you implement it, there are actually 3 kind of types of messages. If you are 2 NCC recipient, you should never see BCC, right? Because they're supposed to be secret from you. If you are one of BCC recipients, you might get a special copy which contains only US BCC, and this copy, but it's a special version of the message being sent out. If you're a sender of the message, your sent mailbox might contain a copy of all BCC messages, which is yet another version of the message potentially. I think maybe BCC is quite special and complicated, so we probably should talk about it anyway, just to help implementers.
So we talked about this when we did RFC 2630. Yeah, 2630. So,
which one is that?
That's the first version of CMS. And it's what you just said is all very well understood and I think explained in that document and been carried forward in subsequent versions. Jim shaking his head, it wasn't carried forward. Oh. But the whole point is that you can't walk through the recipient infos and find out who the BCCs were. That's what you're trying to protect against.
If people think about what BCC is for, they can probably figure it out, but I think spelling out cases might be useful. If you have, can you send a message maybe to me directly with the pointer, and then I'll have a look, and then
sure.
Then maybe there is nothing to do, just point to this document. I know that email spec itself also has a little blurb about BCC, which sort of try to describe, but it doesn't talk about encryption or signing at all, so that's sort of extension of it.
Jim Schott. I know that I read the message drafts several times during the last editing, and I don't remember reading this. That doesn't mean it's not there, but I don't remember it. Going back way deep in my mind, I vaguely think that when I implemented it, I didn't care about this problem. Because trying to solve it was going to be too hard.
So Jim, that one way of not caring is saying, if it has BCCs, I won't let you do this.
No, if you have BCCs, everybody's there.
Oh, so they were able to determine it from the
Yes.
recipient infos.
I think there are implementation choices. You can also never include BCC. Depends how many messages you want to generate, so that it's actually
That's right.
slightly complicated interaction matrix between this case.
Slightly complicated.
Well,
No, it gets really confusing when you get a non-delivery notice to figure out what one it was about. Seriously.
Well, and even more confusing is if you are not actually controlling what goes in the sent mail folder, but the SMTP submission code is,
Correct.
then you get umpteen copies of the message that you're saying no. But
You get 1 + 1 for each BCC. That's right.
yes, depend if you choose to implement it this way. Yes, exactly.
like I said, too hard.
Well, do I take this discussion as indication that there might be some interest in actually spelling it out? But please do send me the link. Maybe it's already covered. If it's not covered,
Well, what the other document says is you should generate 1 message per BCC and 1 for all the rest.
yes.
And so,
But yeah, what it doesn't say, if the message is in your send folder, can be possibly another version of the message, which contains all BCC, but only in your send folder.
yes,
Yeah, right.
you could collect them in only your sent folder into 1 message.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, some work is ahead of us, I would say.
Sorry, it's just something I implemented recently, and there were lots of bugs submitted on this. So why is this message displaying BCC to me? I'm not supposed to see it this way.
Jim Charlie again. So I just went through the latest message SMS back. The term BCC occurs exactly once in the middle of an encrypted example.
Wonderful.
Okay. Are there any further comments to
Yeah,
the sender
looks like-
requirement? Someone is coming.
I'm Deb Coulier from NSA. Do you have time? Because I don't have to ask this question if you don't have time.
This is the only chartered work on the agenda.
So you have a message with a BCC. You want to encrypt that message. You want to sign that message too. I don't care about the signing part. It's the encrypting part I care about, right?
Right.
So because when I encrypt a message in SMIME, I have a recipients list,
That's right.
right? And so if the recipients list includes the BCCs, then why bother BCCing them?
That's the
Because
point.
recipients list. Yeah,
That's why you
exactly.
separate it.
Yeah. So if it's that way, then just screw it, right? Just make it all out there because you already know who they are, so you don't care. If you have a separate message for each BCC, which is what I think you were saying,
Yes. One.
you have one for all the like legit recipients.
The
and
twos
then
and the CCs.
and then you have one for each
BCC.
Each BCC separate too, right?
Correct. Because the
So-
BCCs can't know about
But
each
they
other.
don't want to know about each other either,
Right.
right? So in that case, from a header point of view, you can ignore it, right? You can ignore in the big message with all the legit recipients, the non-BCC recipients. You can just handle the header the way that you do ordinarily and just ignore the BCC.
Well, sort of. It's not that simple because you don't want it to generate a message, a copy for the twos and the CCs for each BCC. And so if that header stuff gets looked at in the submit, you end up generating a bunch of stuff, a bunch of messages that go to the wrong people. You end up having to make a 2. Each BCC has to become a 2 in the subsequent messages.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have,
This is why Jim said it's too hard.
I agree with you. I do agree with Jim. And why don't you just not BCC at all and be done with it?
That could be some implementation advice.
But in my world, BCC is very common when they're sending to a big group and nobody wants to be bothered with a reply all. They'll just BCC everybody. And so in that case, if you're doing it right, bam, how many questions? Like if I'm BCCing a whole stupid DL of like 300 people, that's 300.
No, it's one.
It's one message for the DL.
One message to the mail list manager, who then.
Oh, you're assuming there's a mail list manager.
Well, no, mailman even, right?
Encrypting. Like
Yes.
you're encrypting it for them. They have their own keys, right?
You can't do that with the mail list manager without an RFC 2634 mail list manager. Otherwise you only have one address, so you can only generate one recipient info.
Yeah, right.
You don't know who's on it, so you can't get the keys.
Right.
Right.
Right. So I agree with Jim. It seems a little ridiculous. Hard. I know, but I think this falls into the, and I'm not, to be fair, I've looked at the draft for the 15 minutes you've been talking, so. Keep it simple, stupid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my comment.
Okay, so I'm channeling Sean Leonard. 3 comments there now. First, what was that RFC that Russ mentioned earlier?
Which time, the mail list manager or the other one?
Yeah.
The one that's supposed to
RFC 2632, I believe.
Okay, so
It's either 2 or the last digit is either a 2 or a 3.
so next question is, you can consolidate BCCs if the BCCs use the same certificate, and similarly, you can eliminate the BCC if a 2RCC and the BCC share the same certificate.
Sure.
And the third comment is, it's not that hard. Also, when you say, there's more to this. Also, when you say BCC becomes 2, what really is needed is that the BCC is included in the SMTP mail to command, but it stays in BCC in the RFC 5322 message. Alexis says correct.
Jim, there's one other problem with actually sending multiple messages, which is all of a sudden your messages IDs don't track, so basically you get no correlation between messages at that point.
Jim, that was my point about the non-delivery notice, because then you got to figure out.
Oh, non-delivery notices are much easier than replies. Delete one.
Mm-hmm.
I think whether they have different or same message ID, it depends on your implementation.
It depends on your mail server.
It depends on how submit works on your
Yes.
code. Yeah.
Or libraries, or the combination of the whole thing.
Okay. Any other comments on the general requirements section? So for me, the summary is we need to look at BCC a bit more closely and figure out whether there is more text needed. Probably there is.
Comment not about BCC. I think probably important point from this slide that I personally think that signing an encryption case might be a bit different about which headers you care about, about encrypting, protecting and not protecting. That's why I think it's easier to look at them as two separate cases, and if there is any commonality, then it can be combined.
So that refers to the requirement of having the same format, or?
No, it's just the list of headers you care about to protect for signing case versus signing and encryption is potentially different.
All right, that's why I kept them apart here.
So the first 3 requirements, that explanation why they're separate.
Yep. Yeah, right. Okay, so then we go to the, now I
Wrong
went
way.
back.
Yeah.
Okay, receiver requirements. So what we found there was basically if you have protected headers and then you have the outdoor unprotected headers, you have potentially two different versions of headers. And you need to figure out what to display them. Usually you just display them the inner ones because the outer ones could be have tampered with. In any case, this needs to be documented and we need to find out whether there are exceptions to this rule. And then it's again the same, the receiver needs to be able to detect man in the middle attack or downgrade attacks. Oh, any questions to the receiver requirements? I guess they are more or less straightforward. So then we have backward compatibility requirements. There are kind of two areas of requirements we need to discuss. Like one is how to distinguish between forwarded and wrapped messages. That has to be the source of many issues of displaying a message that some clients interpreted an encrypted wrapped message as a forwarded message and just didn't show it or like didn't allow to show it. Or let's say it was not possible to actually look at it. It was just an attachment. Should we help these clients to fix their implementations? Because also like in simple forwarded cases, it's basically an issue if you can't like read the forwarded message. This is kind of one thing. This is the B1, and then we talk later about the rest. I think Alexei had to say something about this, what I just mentioned.
Yeah, when we were discussing slides yesterday, there might be a variation of the first requirement or sort of an extra requirement about, I really struggle how to explain it. I called it no weird artifacts in UI. So basically, if you know, we have several proposals for doing header protection, and one of them cause weird side effects in unextended clients that don't understand it. That might be a way of, you know, possibly negative against this approach or not. Or maybe, as Bernie says, maybe we should try to see how many clients are broken in this respect. If the clients cannot handle nested messages anyway, they're already broken. Maybe we should encourage them to be fixed in the first place. So maybe it's not a big deal.
Jim Schott. Another thing you have to distinguish in B1, I don't know if such a thing exists, but it makes sense that it would. If you had a 2634 mailing list that top, not a multi-part alternative at the top, much like what the IETF says, where it says this was processed by this mailing list, and then re-encrypts it.
I'm not sure whether this fits still into header protection. Or
well, no, it's something you have to distinguish in terms of between a forwarded message and a wrapped message.
Yeah, okay, got it. Yeah.
I think Jim is trying to say there's a difference between forwarded and mail list processed. No? Okay, then I misunderstood.
I'm saying that when the mail list process occurs, it may put another layer on, which makes
yes, the triple wrap is what you're doing.
No, MIME layer.
Ah.
So it may actually change the MIME message that is encrypted, which makes the distinction potentially between forwarded and wrapped messages a little bit harder.
That should fail. That should fail unless it is a
it doesn't change encrypted message.
Right.
It's sort of, it wraps it in a different way in multi-part structure. Yes. Okay.
Then you're still not communicating, Jim.
I'm the mailing list. I get your message.
Yep.
I decrypt it.
I
now put a wrapper on saying that I played with it.
Yep.
I now re-encrypt it and send it to everybody.
Yep.
That may not look the same depending on whether you've got forward messages or route message in V1. That may change your detection algorithm a bit.
Oh. And it may break the signature.
Well, no, because it re-signed it.
No,
Because you put it outside the signature.
that's right.
On the Marcus Bed Foundation, we are doing this message dropping approach already with PGP, and we're also observing how this looks like in clients which don't know anything about it. In the usual case is that it looks like you receive a message forwarded by yourself, kind of. And what we already did is we already added new proposition of forward equals no. So this could perhaps be a way forward for these cases, but also the memory hole approach, which is the other one, we are consuming it already too. So we are like trying to be interoperable with whatever is out there in the end, of course with a preference to this wrapping approach, but I think it's not that a big issue usually in clients which can show wrapped messages. And it has at least one advantage, it is that you can still see the headers. You can at least see what the subject was intended to be. In the memory hole approach, you don't see that. So you have always like advantages and disadvantages. So that would be like also something to look at, how to deal with that. Okay.
Yeah. It's in a way, it's artifact in the UI, but it's a useful artifact, which is sort of, yeah. I think I understand what you like in Thunderbird. If you have a nested message, you can see some headers in the nested message, where in memory hole approach you wouldn't see it. Will just be part of the main message. Again, yeah, okay.
Just the encrypted message, or just three dots in any mail nowadays, and if you cannot. You have to open up, you decrypt your email manually and look for these MIME parts where the actual subject stands. And I think this might be for normal users even a bigger issue than if it's not widely deployed. But there are drawbacks in all directions, I think. So we need to work interoperability somehow.
Actually, I was even further thinking about this forward equals no proposal of Alexei. We have also like forward equals yes, and we have forwarded something neutral or nothing. And I have a feeling we are getting like 3 different meanings of this, which is kind of beyond the header protection thing. But I think forwarded yes, tell the client, hey, there's a forwarded message, handle it. It's not just an attachment. We don't know nothing about it, or maybe there's no forwarded and no encrypted message. It's just an attachment. And then our case would be forwarded equals no, which means we have an encrypted message. It's just dropped. So just something to think further about the proposal we are making up. But okay, so any further comments to this forwarded versus wrapped messages, or can we go to the next thing, which I'm just doing? This next 4 requirement, BS1 to 3 and PR1, this is mainly about the negotiation mechanism or indication of support feature, or indication of support of something. And we are not quite sure whether we need that. But the basic idea is that a client can indicate that it implements full support of this RFC2B, which we are now generating. And the receiver side can see that and possibly behave differently. If he knows the other side understands the full header protection, it can behave differently than other clients he doesn't know anything about. Not sure whether this is needed, but if we have that, then it means we need an indication mechanism. We need a mechanism to figure out whether the other side is supporting it, and we need a way to figure out the subject header field to be displayed to the user of unaware clients, and at the receiving side, we need to detect for support of new header protection. Probably the requirements need to be cleaned up a bit, but before we probably need to have a discussion whether we include that requirement or not. I'm not sure about that, whether we at all need it. Any comments on this? Silence in the room. My perception is that people have. No, I interpret the silence that not too many people have read the draft as we discovered before. So, okay, while I'm talking, someone is going to the microphone.
Russ, are you going to say what you said the other day about multiple clients?
I'll let you.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you have multiple clients with different capabilities, this is a little bit interesting.
I know. I'm aware of that. Yeah.
Alexi, why are you staring at the ceiling?
I mean, different clients.
No, are you trying to understand what the comment was, or?
Yes.
It's even
So
worse.
the concern is if you have two clients running against the same IMAP, and one of them can handle header protection and the other can't, what do you send back?
It is the whole backward compatibility case, right?
Yes,
So,
that's
which is,
but it's the same mailbox as far as the sender's
well,
concerned.
this is actually somewhat more complicated in the sense of, in case we want to distinguish that the new header protection is different from the old header protection and different from I don't support header protection. You know.
No, the point is it's not yes or no. The point is my laptop does what my cell phone doesn't, and I read mail on both.
Yeah.
If we design it right, I think it will still be reasonable in all clients. You will have, you know, maybe you're not going to see as much information, or maybe it's going to present it in an ugly way, but you still be able to do something with it. Where a new client, they will just handle it automatically.
So if we're looking at your BS for number 2.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm really at this point. I'm undecided how, you know, whether we need like a new header field saying, you know, I'm this new shiny header protection thing, because on the flip side there is, you know, there is MIME header saying, you know, version 1.0. I think the intent at some point was there would be multiple versions, and there would never be multiple versions. So it's actually more generic versioning is not useful unless we make a mistake and have to do this again. And then it might be useful to have this flag so we can revise it. So, but yeah.
Amani?
I just wanted to say that even inside the same mail clients, by instance, Enigmail, there is a mess because there are different approaches of header protection, and all of a sudden the subject gets leaked, or you just receive like replied to ... and stuff like that. So it's really a mess, which we should even inside one client try to fix before talking of even more than that, because I think it's really difficult to solve in the end. So it's obvious.
Yeah, I think we probably couldn't solve the problem by fixing all the implementation by working around them. I don't think it's going to work, but
that's right.
I think we should collect the issues we see and see if there is any pattern, and maybe, you know, talk to implementers, and work out a plan.
Okay, so for me, this like indication of support thing, we could put it like this, that we only look at it if we see a goal after we have chosen the solution, because it kind of really depends on the solution we are taking. And so probably we should leave it in, but like degrade it to a way that it's not a must. So that's my feeling. Okay, any further comments? So then the next steps, Was it to the last slide?
Yes. And it's actually just a general comment. Paul Turner, I'm representing Benify here, and I have not read the draft, but in listening to this, how much consideration is being given to usability? Today, just signing and encrypting for the regular user, even frankly for knowledgeable users, is complicated enough. Adding another level, and so I'm just wondering, in this process, if you're going to be giving some thought to that, or how things might be dealt with.
So, Hernan is going to say something.
I can, Nonny Marcus from PEP Foundation. I can talk for pre-TC privacy. What we are doing, we are indicating like if a message is private or not with symbols and texts. So we are somehow taking UX into consideration, and of course also showing the right subject in the end, be that memory hole, be that PEP. But as soon as we get in interaction with other clients which are not aware of these protocols, then things might get a little bit. I mean, of course, you can still indicate that the message is secure because it's encrypted and signed. Or if you trusted the other peer, then we show it green. So this stuff can also be shown if we interact with like classic PGP users, or later on with S-MIME users, which should be supported. So we have like a UX concept here, but if that's IETF scope is another question. I mean, as the AutoCrypt people are discussing like how UX should look like, but it is kind of in scope, but I think not in scope of this draft here. So we have like other areas where we are presenting these rating systems and these kind of things.
Jim John, with the caveat that I'm actually no longer working for anybody who's doing a mail client. At the time I was doing that, I would basically say, assuming that we actually have the backwards compatibility sufficiently well solved, the user doesn't even know it. I just automatically do it.
Okay. Then some comments from my side on these UX considerations. I'm pretty sure we are not going to solve it here in LAMPS. As previous speaker said, I am convinced that UX needs to be more and more taken into consideration, especially if it goes to privacy and security relevant things. But the IETF so far has not been keen on including that. But this may change or may not, or maybe, did you want to make a comment, Alexei? Or?
Yeah, I think it's not IETF's strength to talk about UIs. I would agree to that. I think this is, understanding of this is changing, and it's not, I personally find this discussion to be useful. You know, whether this is going to be a document or a separate document, I don't know. But I think having discussions about what the better ways of representing this and as metaphors for both displaying on the receiving side, what level of protection message receive, and on the sending side, you know, what kind of choices, you know, because like typical clients provide you separate choice for encryption, for signing, and you can do encryption only messages, and then it's like, well, you generated one of these, what do you do with it on the other end, right? Again, there are better UIs, or possible better UIs for doing this sort of thing.
Yeah, okay, I agree we can document something in the header protection, but the question goes beyond header protection, I would say. Even inside the S-MIME world or inside the email world, there would be a lot of more need for that, and I'm pretty sure the scope of LAMPS, in particular his work item, is not covering to solve that general problem. On the other hand, I had just some talks about maybe raise some discussions in the IETF generally how to deal with the UX problems. And there may be coming something in the near future that we discuss in general how IETF should deal with this problem. Okay, so then again, next steps. So we need to get some kind of a confirmation that we got the requirements right and the protection level question right. And so we are doing a loop in the mailing list and hoping to get a bit more like feedback from more people who have actually read the draft. So it's a bit more time to actually read the draft before give feedback in that case. I'm not sure how well that works on this list. Anyways, then once we have that, we try to reach out to the implementers of clients and libraries to gain feedback and to probably get some advice on how to go on. Both of these steps will lead to an update of the requirements ID. And once we have a pretty good shape of requirements ID, we start the solution ID that is kind of addressing these requirements and goes into the solution space. Okay, any questions, discussions? Do you want to add something, Alexei? Or? No. Okay. So if you have some questions, please speak now. Doesn't seem to be the case. Thank you.
Did you tell Hendrik to get in? Hendrik, would you put yourself in presenter mode? Do you join the queue or whatever you do? Whatever you did when you practiced.
Okay, so can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, this is right. Okay, so I'm happy to give my presentation remotely. Though I just want to give an update on what discussion took place at IETF 104 in Prague, and after that, Russ, can you switch to the next slide, please? So yeah, this is more or less a summary. So we got discussion on whether changes to CMP needs to be a standard track RFC and therefore must be approved by some working group. And we discussed that the profiling and referencing the CMP RFC could either be an individual contribution or working group item. And Stefan Fries discussed with Jim on the side of the ACE working group meeting, and the conclusion was that the CMP profiling is not that specific to constrained environments, and therefore they thought the topic is better located in LAMS than in ACE. And yeah, anyhow, LAMS is a kind of successor of PKIX, and CMP was originated in PKIX. So that's what we thought in the beginning too. So still the goal stays to do this work within the LAMS group. What I did since the last IETF meeting, I came up with a separate document on updates to CMP. I will give a short introduction on what is in there. So it's a quite short draft, and I provide an update to the CMP profiling document, and I will give a summary of what changes are there. On the mailing list, I proposed a text for the rechartering or as addition to the LAMS charter, and we had some discussion, and I will give a quick overview of that discussion also. So Russ, can you switch to the next slide? So yeah, this is the Lightweight CMP profile document. You see the name of the draft changed from industrial CMP profile to Lightweight CMP profile. This is mainly reflecting the discussion that we are not focusing to industrial use cases only. So industrial use cases are some use cases, of course, important for us, but the profiling on CMP is more multi-purpose to have easier implementation of multi-purpose use cases and to tailor the variety of CMP features to implement those multi-purpose use cases, and that's why we also decided to change the title of the document. Then I had some discussion with Thomas Gustafsson on this omit confirmation, and he said, okay, there are a lot of use cases where confirmation typically is not used or not wanted, and therefore he asked whether we could incorporate this omit confirmation feature into the standard use case, and I did so by adding this to the standard header specification, and therefore it can be used as a standard feature. And I think this addresses Thomas' requirement quite well. The second part I was working on was to change this revocation use case, revocation on behalf of an end entity, so revocation by some management station revoking an end entity certificate from optional to recommended. This was a feedback from within my company that this is quite an important use case and that it should be supported. Yeah, and in doing this, I also completed the specification on the revocation message flow. Also, in consequence to the focusing on multi-purpose and lightweight profiling and the discussion also in the ACE group, we removed these, let's say, placeholder for co-op-based transport and piggybacking of CMP messages from the document. And we think if someone wants to specify this, we should do it in a separate document. Okay, so are there any questions to the CMP profiling document? No, so I will continue to the update CMP document. So there are mainly two topics addressed in this document. The major reason why having this document is that we need envelope data instead of encrypted values for protected delivery of centrally generated private keys. And we had some discussion with Jim on mail on how to do that, and he pointed us to this encrypted key choice in the CRMF document. And in CRMF, anyhow, surprisingly, the encrypted value is depreciated anyway in favor of envelope data. So I think it is quite a good and important improvement for the crypto agility to open up CMP also for envelope data. And there is some discussion going on in my company whether just exchanging encrypted value with encrypted key offers enough and proper backward compatibility. But I have a backup slide on that. So I'm happy to get any feedback from other AS1 experts. So what the best way to do this is.
So this is Russ. I have a question.
Yes.
It's why are you just wrapping this as opposed to putting a whole PKCS8 package in there? You know, and with the recent extension, I don't know, 58 something that Sean did, it would allow you to distribute the public key and the private key and the algorithm identifiers and all that in one big wrapped thing.
Okay, I didn't really looked into that document that much. I thought envelope data package is quite straightforward for the protection of the private key part. But yeah, if there are other proposals for reaching this goal, I'm open.
5958, right? Is that right, Sean?
That's about right.
Okay, he's shaking his head, yes.
I remember what actually goes in there is, in point of fact, a private key info inside the envelope data.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
But is it just the private or the whole one asymmetric?
It's just the private because the public is actually outside.
Yes, so the public key is in the certificate anyhow, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay. It's worth looking at.
Okay.
You might be right.
By the way, this is exactly what CMC does. And we made the change to the format for CMC, but it was not picked up by CMP.
I thought, this is ancient history, CRMF pulled both.
CMC, this is for CRMF, the modifications for CMRF. We put this into CRMF. CMC picked up that change. CMP did not.
Oh, so this is just aligning,
yes.
Is what you're saying. Thank you.
Yeah. So I was really surprised because CMP and CRMF were published synchronously, and yeah, so I didn't really get why that was not adopted in CMP. But yeah, Jim, as you just explained, and that's more or less the goal of update CMP, to open up the agility to have also. Yeah, in the first case, protect private key delivery with ECC key material, what is not possible with encrypted value yet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so a second point I also discussed with Jim a little bit, whether this is needed to be in update CMP, but I think it could be there if we have this document anyhow, and this is introduction of an extended key usage for CMP service like registration or certification authority. This is similar to what has been done in, I think, CMC also. That was a comment from Martin Pelo. He said this would be quite useful to better identify these authorities. Yeah, so this is it more or less at the moment. So if there pops any other important change to CMP up during drafting the profiling document, this could be added here. But right now, I don't see really important points. There could of course be spent quite some effort to do some clarifications or wording improvements that we see useful, but this can also be clarified by the profiling document. So are there any further comments on the update CMP?
No, I don't see any.
Okay, so we could switch to the next slide. This is on the rechartering. So this is a proposal I sent on the mailing list. We had quite some discussion back and forth, several people involved, and I think, Russ, you summarized the involvement, and I copied that here. So there are quite some people supporting this. There was Panos who did not support this, and there are some people willing to involve in reviewing and also implement. And so I think it's quite some positive feedback, and I would be happy to get this adopted to the working group, and would like to continue and speed up the work on the documents.
So anyone who did not speak on the mail list like to make comments about this charter text? So Roman, how do you want us to send this to you?
Sorry, I'm parsing that.
So you have comments. I'd like to hear them before we send it to you.
Yeah, I read that. That's a little dense for me to parse on the first pass here. So why don't I make it a practical instead of standing here at the mic trying to wordsmith it or react? I mean, I'll get it off the mailing list.
Okay,
where
thank
that
you.
Where that block sits, and I'm going to have some feedback.
Okay, so we'll make an edit pass and then submit.
Okay.
This is an addition to the charter. He also posted some draft milestones to the mail list.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about getting the scope right, and then we can arm wrestle over how quickly we're going to get it.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll always be late. I get that.
Okay.
Okay, so that was it from my side on the updates to the CMP work. If there is time, I would like to follow up with a discussion on the crypto agility and the envelope data part. So could share the feedback I got from other colleagues within my company, but I'm also happy to do that off record on the mailing list if we are tight with time in the meeting. Russ, what do you think?
I'm looking at when our slot ends. Hold on.
I think 22 minutes.
Yeah, I think we need to move on then.
Okay.
Because we have two more presentations.
Yeah, so thank you for getting the chance to present this. So I'm happy to get feedback on the update CMP and on especially the backward compatibility issues with this change from encrypted value to encrypted key. Okay, thank you.
Sean Turner, you're up.
Hi, Sean Turner. I hope to give you some time back here. At the last IETF meeting, my co-author came up to me and said, "Hey, you've got this great document, RFC 5480. It came out of this PKIX Tiger team to specify the key usages for elliptic curve. You kind of didn't mention two of them. What are we supposed to do?" So I shot a mail off to the mailing list, and I got two different answers. Thought, well, clearly it's time to write a draft to say what we think it ought to be.
So
Next.
Sean, why did you use Roman numerals on the title for the date?
I have no idea. Oh, that's because I wasn't sure when I was going to get on the agenda or not. Here we go. Next. I was like, what is he talking about? Oh, that. Next. All right, why are we here, right? So basically, I want to do a simple update to 5480 Section 3 to say what the requirements are. Key uses extensions in the subject public key for these three, for IDEC public key, IDEC MQV, IDEC DH, to specify what these other two values are. And that's all we're trying to do. That's it. I'm not trying to adopt anything else. I don't want to carry anybody else's water. Quick and done. Next. So really all we're doing is say must not set these values. So don't set them, you don't for key encipherment and data encipherment, don't set them for IDEC public key, don't set them for ECMQV and ECDH. The one thing about the way 5480 is written, IDEC public key is for unrestricted keys and it's for ECDS keys. That's what it says. If you want to use it for anything else, that's up to you, but this is only for these. And so just do that and that's it. There was some debate. I think there were a couple people that like, hey, this isn't clear. We should specify it. It actually came up, I think, in Ryan Sleeve, you said something on the list about, hey, this has been a problem in the past, so I think we should just go ahead and do this. Next. So what am I here for? It's a whopping 3 pages. I love a pony, but if I can't get that, I love just adopt the draft working group last call it, do whatever you do, just pump this out. It's 3 pages. It's like 8 lines of text. Really, all I want to do is add a couple, those words basically, don't, must not for those things. Is there anybody that thinks that this is a horrible idea and wants to get to the microphone and argue me into the ground for why we should leave this unspecified or not make it must not?
Roman, do we have to recharter for this?
That's even better. You don't even have to adopt it as a working group. Roman could just run his AD process and just knock this bad boy out. It is clarifications for PKICs. I'd argue that 5480 came out of PKICs. So I just, again, the reason why I kind of put this up there is for time allows because I understood the charter is written pretty narrowly. So I don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think the charter is written so narrowly that it doesn't go into one of the specific
buckets
right now. The way we have to integrate it.
But if this is so clear,
how about when we do the CMP charter, we include a little wiggle room for clarification of previously adopted work or something.
Right, and we can also ask to rename lamps, right? Just PKICs 2 or something now. Okay, I'm joking. But again, that's really all the draft is. So if anybody can tell me why it shouldn't be this way, you're using these already, something that would change what I think was the clear thing was to just say don't use them.
I mean, we could talk about AD sponsorship given how simple this is, but what I would like to do is have a forcing function to have the charter change, to have this wedge to do this again and again.
So I am carrying your water.
You are carrying the water.
All right.
It's a short draft, so I just read it.
Yeah.
So we've got these 2 values that must not be present.
Yeah.
So obvious question, what if they are?
Well, it depends on whether the extension is critical, right?
That's right.
So does that make the certificate invalid if it's critical?
So my understanding is, yeah, if you used it for one of those purposes, you'd pump it out. I mean, it's the typical processing rules, right?
The typical thing is that it's not that I didn't make up these key usages just because, but I used the template and the template that I've been using since I was doing RSA certificates, and I'm still doing the same extension that I had in the RSA certificates.
Great.
So does that make the certificate invalid and I should beat myself up and change my template?
So are you using templates that set these values? Is my question.
I don't anymore, but it's possible that my previous employer is. I don't know.
Your previous employer.
I think that would be a good question, but I would think that in the general internet case that people wouldn't really be setting these things because I think CAs were never setting them in the first place. And that's really what this comes down to.
But self-signed certs could.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So self-signed certs, you can do whatever the heck you want, right? But I mean, at the end of the day, CAs probably weren't really setting these things.
Max, are you going to the mic or not?
It's all right, great. Thank you very much. I'll yield the rest of my fictitious time. Thank you.
All right, so I think we have an action as chairs to propose some charter text for clarifications to SMIME and PKICS documents.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So which one of you two is presenting?
Yeah, while folks are coming up, I mean, the reason, again, to reiterate as I go through the charter, why we need to to do some updates is the last paragraph. It reads, in addition to the LAMP working group may investigate other updates to documents produced by Keep PKIX, blah, blah, but the working group shall not adopt any of these potential edits without rechartering. We put ourselves in a box.
No, Steve Farrell put us in a box.
Yes.
Did you hand him the clicker?
Hi, Mike Elmsworth. So I'm going to try and do this quickly. I've got more slides than I maybe intend to go through in depth, but they'll be in there for the archives.
Get closer to the mic.
Closer to the microphone. More better?
More better.
So this is post-quantum. This is trying to figure out how we use post-quantum inside existing X59 CMS, whatever it is you do with your crypto. So what came out of sort of a lot of the academic conferences I've been to is that in the transition period to post-quantum, you don't know if RSA is broken. You don't know if your whatever new thing you're using is broken and just not announced yet. So you really want to sign everything twice. So picture in the bottom corner there, Alice sends to Bob. Alice really wants to do 2 signatures on every document and send 2 signatures. Bob wants to verify 2 signatures. This is sort of the transition strategy. And I've heard arguments that maybe this is going to be a long-term strategy. We don't know. So we need some sort of mechanism to specify how this is going to work. We, as a group, Entrust Data Cards, Cisco, Icera, Max at Cable Labs, we've been talking about this for what, almost 2 years now? How do you do this mechanism in a way that's easy and transition safe and simple and yada, yada, yada? Icera put in a draft Truskowski a year ago. That was one kick at the can. This is a second kick at the can. What we're trying now is to say, all right, let's define a new algorithm. That algorithm is composite. The value of the algorithm is a list of public keys or a list of signatures, ASN1 sequence. And we're proposing that this is the simplest way to accomplish this multiple signature scheme.
There's a huge bit of not said stuff there, like what if one's valid and the other's not?
Yes,
okay.
Correct. I wrote slides not to be in depth, but to sort of, so at this stage, I think we'd like to make the world aware that we're trying to do this work, and we'd like to get more feedback, more people to read the draft that we've put up. And I don't know if we're ready to talk about rechartering for the next lamps, or I don't know how sort of mature we feel this is, but we've done a couple years worth of work into this. We'd like to get a bigger audience involved, and exactly, there's a lot of complexity that gets swept under the rug here, and I'd like it to get discussed. And I think we've addressed and thought through most of it, but more pairs of eyes, please welcome. So, sort of, why do we do it? Generally, simplicity. We think we believe this is the simplest way to accomplish this. We believe it just drops into existing protocols. We believe that you don't need the protocol layer to be aware. If you define a new algorithm ID, then it goes down to the library level. The library is asked to verify a signature. What's the algorithm? The algorithm is composite. This is all handled by the low-level crypto library. Your protocol doesn't need to change. We think it's simple. There's a few security wins over sort of competing strategies for doing it. I'm going to gloss over it. The details are there in the slides if you want to look them up. The open design questions that Russ just alluded to, there are a number of sort of big ones. We've taken what we think are reasonable decisions, having had, lengthy debates among the authors. Yeah, big chuckle from Scott. But there are some questions. I'm aware that they're big. I'm aware that they need to be talked about, and I welcome this discussion to bubble over. We haven't really bubbled it over into the mailing list yet, but maybe I should start being more aggressive about that. And so the first one, I think, is Russ's point, is what do you do? What does a verifier do if they receive, say they receive a document that has 4 signatures and they only recognize one of the algorithms? What do you do? Or one of the algorithms is deprecated. RSA is totally broken and you receive something that's got 3 signatures and one of them is RSA. How do you handle that case? And there are definitely reasonable cases in which, all right, we signed with 3 algorithms because we want it to still be strong even after RSA is broken. That's sort of the whole point of doing it. But you need to define quite carefully how that behavior works, how the clients are going to allow themselves to continue verification even if one of the algorithms is broken. And I think we've defined that fairly rigidly, and I think we believe that what we have is a watertight implementation, but we admit that it's sort of tricky to get right, and the algorithm is a little bit finicky. So if there's a way to simplify that and tighten that more, please do. One of the open questions I think is straightforward. Key revocation. If you contact your CA and say, please revoke my key, I think all of the component keys get revoked. I think that's obvious. I think doing anything else leads to problems. If you are submitting a CSR to a CA and one of your component keys was previously declared revoked through some other thing, the CA probably needs to do component-wise checks against all other keys. That's a little bit complicated. That's hard to do right. But I think they sort of have to be this way. Jim?
Jim Shaw. I'm having problems because I don't revoke keys. I revoke certs. So I'm not really too sure what you're saying.
So I'm referring to the CAB forum requirement that CAs can't issue a cert for a key that's been previously revoked. Maybe that's a CAB problem, not an IETF problem. Fair.
Hi, I'm sorry I haven't read the draft, so this question may be very stupid. But why do you compose signatures rather than have new fields in the certificate that are alternative signatures on the to be signed certificate?
Fair. So it's almost a question for Dan. Sarah did a draft a couple years ago that was more along those lines, adding an extension to the extensions. Max, are you going to try and answer?
So yeah, that was considered, and actually, as Max said, Daniel, etc., they already work on an extension that actually carries the next signature. We decided to go this way mostly because this is very aligned with how the way we process certificates, etc. And not only that, once you do a signature this way, then you can extend this to use it in every single type of PKIX type of structures, from revocation to OCSP responses, and everything fits well without having to add extensions to all these protocols. So defining this way, it just makes it happen for my PKI.
Or put a different way, we don't want to have to open up every RFC ever to add a new field. We're trying to just use it. It should, in theory, just go. The last sort of open design question that we're still hotly debating within the authors group is key usages and extended key usages. Do they apply to all? Would they apply to all component keys? So if you say this is a signing certificate, do you have to only put signing keys in it? Right? Numerous people have come up to us and said, hey, you could bring back dual usage certs with this. You could combine all sorts of stuff together. And it turns out when you look at the details, that gets really hard for a verifier to verify a signature if the public key that belongs to that signature is a mix of signing keys, Diffie-Hellman keys, pure encryption keys. And especially when you consider that for example, a lightweight verifier may not have implementations for a lot of stuff. It may not recognize the OIDs. And so how do you distinguish between an algorithm that you don't support and an algorithm that you're not supposed to support because it's not a signature algorithm? And so the verification logic becomes really, really complicated if you allow mixed key usages. So we've decided to ban it.
That, and also we really didn't
Scott Fleur.
Scott Fleur. We also didn't want to get into details about how you actually do a composite encryption. And if you consider it a composite KEM, that gets to be a real pain that we didn't want to touch.
Good plan.
So we tried to keep this as simple as possible, being aware that this is already complicated enough, and so we tried to cut out as much as possible.
You've achieved the high water mark, not the low water mark.
Sorry, I'm a little bit confused. Are you talking about...
Who are you?
Stefan Satterthal. Sorry. Are we talking about carrying multiple public keys or just multiple signing keys for signing the certificate?
Both.
Both. So we've defined, the structures we've defined are multiple public keys or composite public keys and composite signature values. So I think the answer is both.
So I would understand why it would have like multiple signatures, but for me, a certificate is something that verifies the owner of a key, and when you introduce more keys, my head starts spinning.
Okay, so think about it as you have a key. You have a single key. It happens to be composed of multiple algorithms, but that's not your problem. You have a key in a PEM file that inside may be more than one thing, but it's still think of it as still as a single key.
So it's still a single key of multiple components.
Mm-hmm. Can I translate? I think what you were trying to raise as an issue is the signature validation by the CA of a CSR is different than the signature validation on that document, because the CA has to make sure you have the private key that corresponds to every component within the composite.
And also do what all the private key or public key checks that a CA is required to do.
Whatever
each
proof of
component,
possession
yada,
means.
yada, yada.
Riyad Wabi, can you say a few words about the Riyad Wabi? Can you say a few words about the security guarantees that you're trying to provide here? It's not totally obvious for example, what the unforgeability property should be. If I forge one of the signatures, have I forged a certificate?
Really, I should have done more introduction on these slides. Sorry, I assumed I was going to have 0 time and just put this. Yeah, sorry, I should have introduced better. I'm not sure I totally understand your question.
So there are 2 signatures in the composite signature.
Yes.
One is RSA, one is Sphinx.
Yes.
It turns out tomorrow that Sphinx is broken.
Yeah.
I can forge Sphinx signatures now.
Yeah.
I can make a certificate that has an invalid RSA signature, but a valid Sphinx signature. Is that valid? Alternatively, what if I can just maul the Sphinx signature? Is that
right? So you should have to break all of them. Breaking.
So the verification requirement is all must verify.
All that your verifier has libraries for must verify.
I see. So that still means that like breaking a single one breaks the certificate in the sense of forgeability.
Breaks the validity of the certificate. The certificate will be rejected.
Right. So
if one
if
has
any
been
of the
tampered
signature
with.
algorithms is forgeable, then the entire certificate is forgeable. Sorry, let's forget forgeable. Strongly forgeable. So I can produce a second signature that's valid on the same certificate. So if any of them is not strongly unforgeable, then the whole certificate is not strongly unforgeable.
You
So
get
this is like a
you get the
proliferation of-
security property of the strongest signature
No, the
algorithm on it.
weakest.
The weakest.
Of the weakest. You get the security property of the weakest,
weakest.
because they're verified in parallel, not in series. As long as that's okay, that's fine. But like if we want strongly unforgeable certificates, then this can't possibly give it. Assuming that any of the underlying algorithms could possibly in the future become like strongly.
Maybe we should take this offline.
You get the most secure algorithm that is both in the certificate and that the relying party supports.
That's true, assuming that it's okay for somebody to produce a second valid certificate from an initial valid certificate.
I don't think you can do better with that relying party that doesn't support the more secure algorithm.
But you don't know. You don't know.
I don't know how good this relying party is. That's
That's the point.
This is fair. The question was only to be clear about what the properties are, because it seems possible that this is a weakening of existing guarantees, and it might be not intuitive, and it may in the future produce some breakage, like in some weird corner case that suddenly becomes an emergency.
So I made to generalize your comment, if I can take a stab at generalizing way out, I think we can agree that we're putting a lot of security properties on the verifier. The verifier has to be comfortable in what it supports. The verifier has to reject if it sees a lot of things it doesn't support. There ends up having to be strong policy on the side of the verifier. Does that cover your argument?
More or less, almost. I think in some cases we may lose security properties that we currently have on certificates.
going to this composite certificate. And
Yes.
at least that should be stated somewhere.
Yeah, and
clearly, so
one
we don't sort of make mistakes.
one property in particular that we lose is if you have a single key, if you have an RSA certificate and RSA becomes deprecated, your certificate is done, gets revoked, implicitly gone. We lose that property for sure.
Max Fowler, just commenting on what you said. The same type of attack can be done with a single key certificate, right? And if the algorithm is weak and you change the signature, that is rejected. So from this point of view, doesn't change the fact that if you change anything in the certificate or in the signature, that gets rejected.
The comment is simply that it may be non-intuitive that we
Mike,
have multiple signatures and yet
get closer to the microphone.
Sorry, the comment is only it may be non-intuitive that we have multiple signatures and yet in some sense we have weaker guarantees.
That's right. Or you have fragmentation of the relying party community depending on what validations they perform. Some think it's good, some think it's not.
And consider this to be a tool, right, in your toolbox when you deploy a PKI that allows you to say, well, I don't know about these algorithms yet, or I know these, but I don't know when they're going to be broken. So let me put multiple of these together so that, today I can verify maybe one of them, not all of them, but if I need to use the key to do signatures, you have to produce all the signatures. So I get your point, and this is a part of the feedback that we will get from the work group.
Alternatively, the working group can decide to change the algorithm to say if there's any algorithms there you don't support, you reject the signature. That solves your problem.
Yes.
Mike Jenkins, NSA. It seems, so I'm not a CA and I haven't designed protocol, but it seems like in order to make it easy on the protocols dealing with this certificate, you kind of push the problem down to the crypt library. Because whereas before you used to send something to the crypt library and it came back and said yay or nay, now it's going to have to do some policy processing. It's going to have to know what algorithms it has and what combination, what's good and bad, and what you consider, which combinations you consider to be, and come back with but still come back with one answer because that's what the protocol expects. Right?
Yes, I think that matches perfectly with what we've designed.
I don't know if that community is here. I mean,
the reason we went that direction is I think I trust crypt library implementers to get this right more than developers who are, ooh, I've just done a bad thing. Okay.
You're messing
yes,
with
I agree. That was a decision we made. Feel free to,
Robin Wilson. I think it's a fascinating discussion, especially where does that policy decision take place? Where does it belong as to what you do if elements of a composite are unacceptable for whatever reason? The question it raises for me is, if you take that as read, does what you propose actually meet the requirement you stated in the first bullet there? Does this address quantum timeline uncertainty? Exactly. And I'm not sure how it does.
Sorry, Ryan Sleevey, Google. I'm torn on this. So the verifier side, the question of how many of the verifier libraries are implementing policy decisions. Certainly the major cryptographic libraries, Boring SSL, Balancing Castle, Windows Tappy, the macOS implementation, the variety here, Chrome browsers implementation, have all basically put their policy logic in the verifier piece doing the signature verification, largely in response to SHA-1 and handling that policy. So the hook is there. That said, there's a messy part of this where separating this from the protocol layer creates new challenges, which is the deprecation timelines have in some ways been coupled to the protocol or the use case that it's being used for, right? Whether we want to talk about payment PCI, continuing to like the SHA-1, or we can talk about code signing in the case of Windows where SHA-1 signatures are still allowed, or the case of OCSP signature verification where SHA-1 signatures still live on despite the fact that they do not live on in X509 certificates themselves. And so I'm not really sure that this gets us that clean separation because I appreciate trying to put it in the verifier layer because we have the central place with policy, but there's also
there is an interplay with the protocol layer that is relevant, and I'm not sure that this makes it any cleaner, and therefore I'm sort of agreeing with you. I'm not really sure that we get the thing that we're trying to get by putting it on.
So, Brian, I would like to, what I think you said, and I want to make sure, is that you're not sure we got any better than having 2 signatures and 2 certs, right? Did I get that right?
So we're not any better than having 2 signatures and 2 certs, or having to address this at the protocol layer through, say, negotiation, PLSI for suite negotiation.
Okay, thanks.
So, Max Ball, Kimberlands. One of the consideration, I don't remember exactly the comment there, but it was about, do we protect against, quantum or other type of attacks, right? The idea here is that with this tool, you can have your PKI to deploy multiple algorithms where some of the clients might not support all of that today. And this is something that can happen. For example, if you have devices in the field, some of them you can update them, some of them you cannot. And in some cases, and one thing that I want to point out is that it's usually the verifier, right? Who's accepting this certificate or not? Ultimately, that takes the risk or not about, do I trust this information or not, right? Once you verify all the crypto, depending on your level of risk, you might decide, well, I know that there's some possible compromises there, but I still accept it or not. This is a policy that is outside the crypto, outside this, and this is specific for the application, the device that you're deploying this to. So I wouldn't try to focus too much on that particular topic in the sense that this tool...
Don't pay any attention to the shiny object.
No. It's just that this is orthogonal, right? It's not that this solves the trust problem or risk-related problems. This gives you a tool to actually do combining. So today I can deploy something that I can verify in 20 years if Sphinx or another protocol are still okay. I can verify signature that I did today on that, and I can take the risk and I can say, I ignore the other algorithms because they're all broken now, and I just trust that. That is sufficient for me. Or I want 2 of them, or I want 3 of them. So from this point of view, actually, it does give you the protection today that you can rely on in 20 years. From my point of view, for example, when I want to deploy something like a PKI, this is very important for me for CA certificates, mostly more than identity certificates, because that chain needs to be valid for 50 years or whatever number of years. And today, I'm not pretty sure it's probably a stretch. But I don't know. So I might rely on the older algorithms still and be more efficient, and or I rely on the new ones. Depends.
Yeah, Tim Holly. I think the one mistake the draft might currently make is prematurely specifying a verifier policy instead of saying, here's a variety of verifier policies and here's what their security properties are. For example, if you wanted something that was strictly better than RSA, you might choose a verifier property that says the RSA signature must 100% be validated. And then, you get policy choices with respect to the additional signatures that you see, and you may choose to require that those, if you're in a high security use case, you may choose that those have to verify as well. I think the one thing that we do want to prevent is having people at the developer or protocol level having an entirely free and uninformed choice about what their verifier policy is. So I think it would be very smart to have a list of a couple of good verifier policies and what their security properties are.
Okay, I think we're out of time. So I think we will continue this discussion on the list. Thank you.